Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Little. Today we have another hand from that $2,000 buy-in tournament that I recently played. And this time we get 10-9 of hearts under the gun. In the previous video I made for PokerNews.com, if you have not watched all those, make sure you go back and do it. You can find it on Poker News or on YouTube. I have a strategy video playlist loaded up. Just find me on there and you'll find it. And I was discussing whether or not we should even raise King 9 of diamonds from under the gun, 8-handed. And 10-9 of hearts is also in that category. I do think you should raise it most of the time. I typically raise 10-9 of hearts every time, whereas I don't raise King 9 of diamonds every time. Just because I think it's very nice to have board coverage on the lower flops. Like imagine you only raise aces, kings, queens, jacks, and ace king under the gun. Let's just pretend you're really nitty. And the flop comes 8-7-6. Well, your opponent knows the best hand you can have is aces, right? And if the best hand you can have is aces, but the best hand they can have is a straight and sets and two pairs and stuff like that, well, that's not really where you want to be. You want to make sure that at least sometimes you have the nuts even when the board comes low. So that's why you do want to raise with pocket sixes under the gun most of the time, and why you do want to raise with 8-7 suited under the gun most of the time. It doesn't give you a ton of nut combinations, but they still exist, and that forces your opponents to be a little bit more cautious when it comes to just blindly attacking you. So anyway, I raise it up to 600, playing 100, 200 with a 25 ante. Some people like to raise small, but whenever you're playing 100 big blinds deep or so, I definitely think you just want to use a full 3 big blind raise. So I do raise to 600. Button, a loose aggressive guy calls, and small blind, a tight aggressive guy calls. Flop comes Jack 8-4 with 1 heart. I have 10-9 of hearts. This is great. Whenever the flop comes somewhat uncoordinated, you typically do want to continuation bet a large chunk of the time. This board is kind of uncoordinated. I mean, clearly it's pretty easy for someone to have ace jack, king jack, queen jack, jack 10. They could also just have a hand like pocket 9s that's not going to fold, or pocket 8s that is obviously not going to fold. So it's not like this board is incredibly dry. If it was instead jack 4-2, well then I'm just going to bet in this scenario with my whole range, even though I don't have anything some chunk of the time. When I do have a draw though, and a draw is usually going to be any gut shot or open-ended straight draw in this scenario, I'm going to be betting. Notice I'm not really raising queen 9 suited under the gun. I'm probably not raising 10-7 suited under the gun. I would raise, like I said, 6-5 suited some portion of the time though, so that's a gut shot, and 7-6. So in this spot, what do my draws look like? Well, they look like 10-9 suited, and 7-6 suited, and 6-5 suited, and that's it. So there's only 12 combinations of bluffs in my range that are obvious draws. I could also bet with stuff like ace 10 with backdoor flush draws, maybe even just straight up ace 10, given the board is kind of uncoordinated. King, queen, stuff like that. But I do have only 12 obvious draws here, and only 4 of those are premium, right? The 10-9 suited is an open-ended straight draw, whereas the other 2 are gut shots. So I'm going to bet this. You almost always want to bet with your best made hands and your draws. And this is just a very, very obvious draw. So we bet 1,200. And now, kind of surprising, the loose aggressive player on the button raises. Tight aggressive guy is going to fold, so we'll forget about him. What should a flop raising range look like on Jack 8-4 whenever you're only playing 75 big blinds deep like the opponent is? I think it should be mostly draws and marginal made hands, because if he did have a set, imagine he has pocket 8s or pocket 4s, he's in position against me, which means he's going to be able to easily get all the money in the pot if he just calls my flop bet. Notice if he calls my flop bet, the pot's going to go to 4,000. On the turn, if he bets 3,000, I call. Pot's going to go up to 11, and he's going to have 12 behind, so maybe he bets 3,400 on the turn to make him have a pot-sized river bet available. So raising to get your stack in is not required. And when that's not required, very often you don't want to have much of a raising range. You could also call. Well, so if I bet here, and he does have a set, he's not worried about protecting his hand because there really aren't very many draws available for me, right? Like I said, only 4 combinations of an 8-out straight draw. Everything else has 4 outs. So there's no reason to raise for protection. So if you don't need to raise to get your money in or to protect your sets, you next want to ask, do I need to raise my draws? If you need to raise your draws because they are so bad, or you're facing such a big flop bet, then you need to raise some sets just to protect your raising range, so it's not all draws. So that may be a reason to raise the sets, but even then, there's only 9 combinations of sets, right? So there's not a whole lot of them available. So what does that mean about the opponent's raising range? Well, I remember this player specifically. He's very splashy, very aggressive, and takes somewhat bizarre lines almost randomly. I think he views himself as like a very good exploitative player where he's trying to figure out what play is going to make the most sense this exact time without realizing that I'm just trying to be somewhat balanced and whatever he's doing is going to lose money if he is deviating from game theory optimal, which he certainly is. So against this guy, I think his range is going to be all over the place. I don't really know what he's doing. He might be raising king, queen. He might be raising pocket fives. I don't know. Clearly, I think both those hands are not such good raising hands. But I do think this player might be doing something like that. So given there are very few nut hands available, and I think this player is probably going to fold a lot if I apply a lot of aggression, I actually like going all in with the 10-9 of hearts. A lot of people were probably looking at this thinking, oh, easy call, right? It's 2,000 more to try to win what's going to be a 7,000 pot, which is pretty good pot odds. And that's true. But given on the turn, if I check and he bets again and I miss, I'm probably going to have to fold. I think the right play is to shove because then I get to see both cards for sure, which means I'm going to realize my 38% equity or whatever it is. And also, I'm going to have fold equity, meaning if the opponent is sitting here with pocket fives, he's folding out the best hand. Or if he's folding out king, queen, he's folding out the best hand. And if he is raising here with a jack or ace four, you know, he's going to call sometimes. He's going to fold sometimes, and that's great because I'm making these hands that all have a lot of equity just fold immediately. So in this scenario, I really do think there is only one option, and that is to rip it all in pretty clearly. If the opponent had something like 18,000 or fewer chips behind, I would be all in here. It is a big all in, and you may ask, well, aren't you just super unbalanced if you're jamming here with 10-9? But realize I would also consider jamming here with pocket fours and also pocket eights. That may seem a little crazy, but I do think it's probably okay. You could also jam with hands like pocket queens that don't really mind protection, understanding that when you do get called, you're pretty unhappy, but you want to make sure that you're not only jamming with bluffs. However, in this scenario, notice my only bluff is 10-9 of hearts that I'm jamming. I'm not jamming the gut shots. So if I'm only jamming 10-9 of hearts, that's only 4 combinations of hands. So I only need to come up with 4 combinations of nut hands, or even 3 or 2, given that my bluff here actually has plenty of equity. So if I were to just jam in this spot with bottom set and 10-9 of hearts, then I'm going to be balanced enough. And that's it. Assuming I raise fours under the gun, which may or may not be the case. But in that scenario, we don't have to jam very many made hands at all to make jamming this specific 10-9 suited good. As you jam more and more draws, and as your draws get weaker, like say I decided to jam all the gut shots too, then we need to jam more strong made hands, like sets, like pocket eights and pocket fours, or maybe pocket aces. Because then, if we jammed all the gut shots, but only bottom set, let's say, then we have way too many bluffs, and then our opponent should be calling with all of his bluff catchers. So anyway, I shove, and the opponent folds. So that's clearly a good success, because whatever he had probably had 10-9 in pretty bad shape. Or notice if I just called, and he bet again on the turn, let's say he decided to raise with 7-6 of clubs. If I call his flop bet, and then the turn is a blank, and I check and he blasts it, now I have to fold. Instead, we just win the pot and protect our equity. And whenever we do get called, we still have a decent chance to win. So that's going to be it for this hand for PokerNews.com. If you have missed any of these hands, make sure you go back and check out my playlist on YouTube where they are all loaded up. Also, if you have not already, make sure you go and sign up to a free trial of PokerCoaching.com. There I have lots and lots and lots of quizzes. If you like going through hands like this, I know you all do because you all watch them every week. If you like going through hands like this, you will love the quizzes because instead of telling you what I do with the 10-9 of hearts here, I make you tell me what you think I should do. And that type of learning is very, very valuable. It's almost like you're playing the hands. I realize one of the struggles that a lot of recreational players have is that they just don't get to play a lot of poker because they have life. Life gets in the way. You have to work every day, and you have to deal with your family, and you have to deal with whatever else is going on in life. And you don't get to go to the casino as much as you'd like. An easy way to kind of go to the casino, sort of pretend like you're going to the casino, is to load up quizzes or hand history reviews like this and actually test yourself. Whenever you are going through poker hands, I highly suggest you pause it before every decision and think about what you would do, and then see if what you do lines up with the, ideally, player whose strategies you respect. And if you're playing like they're playing, you're probably doing pretty good. But if you are way off base a large chunk of the time, then that's a problem, and you need to reassess your strategies. But over at Poker Coaching, we have lots of quizzes so that I force you to pause because you have to tell me what you would do, and then I give you a score. I'll let you know what I think about your play. If you consistently analyze your play against other great players and compare it to other great players' plays, you will have a much faster route to success compared to someone who, sits back and has a beer and watches a poker stream every once in a while. So study hard, study actively, and you'll improve. So that's going to be it for today. Good luck in your games, and I'll talk to you next week.